You know, houses can have artificial siding, you know, they can be changed in some way, but sometimes there are those clues in those houses that say to you, yeah, that's the style that I'm looking for. So Greek Revival. I've got a couple others here. Now this one, Sharon. Okay, Sharon, what about this one? This one's on Burr Oak.
That was a church.
It was a church built.
Civil War, right around the Civil War. We don't have a special date for it. The owner claims that it was sometime in the early 1850s, and I don't see any reason to dispute that. It's on the 1861 map.
Uh-huh.
So.
Well, it's Burr Oak, just past South Rose Street.
Yeah, between Rose and Burdick.
Between Rose and Burdick, on the north side of the street. The indication for me that I thought it was Greek Revival was that entrance, that columned entrance with that pediment up at the front.
Well, that split at the top of the gable is bad.
Yeah, I know. May not be in the best shape, but, you know, Sharon says as she grimaces. All right. Then if you are going to talk about Greek Revival in the Vine neighborhood, you have to include this one. And coincidentally, if I'm not mistaken, this one is getting an award this month, isn't it? It's getting a preservation award. This is the Dexter Walker House. This was built in 1857, okay? And the story that goes with this house was that Dexter Walker was a brick mason and that he made the bricks behind the house, okay? That's the story. Now again, you can see the wide cornice. You can see the return of the cornice. Now, this house, you can really see the true Greek Revival windows, because with the other homes that we have looked at, the window panes had been removed in some way, and you can see how in a true Greek Revival, the windows are divided into 6 over 6. You're going to see that with Greek Revival. Now also, I don't know, can't remember if we've seen it in some of the other ones. I think the Justice Burdick one had it. The shutters on either side of the window, which also you will see in Greek Revival.
They were on this house, they're just not there anymore.
Yeah, they were on it.
You can still see where the pins were.
Had you ever, I don't know if I'd ever seen this house painted. Had any of you seen this house painted? Which is interesting, because we will see brick houses painted. Now, I worked with a woman at the museum for years named Mary Lou Stewart. And Mary Lou always maintained about how the use of Chicago brick, there were some houses here that were brick that were painted, maybe for style, but also for practicality, because of the type of the brick they used, because it was a Chicago brick that was very porous. Sharon, you're saying no. Okay, there goes Mary Lou's story.
It's more style than anything else.
Okay. But wouldn't it be used to protect the house because of the soft brick?
We think of paint today as that kind of protective coating, but at the time when this type of brick was being used, we didn't have a paint that was that solid. Mm-hmm. So it was really usually just for style.
Okay, well, anyway, we know this house was not painted. And a lot of times Greek Revival houses were painted white because they wanted to simulate Greek temples. So there were a lot of Greek Revival homes that were painted white like that. Okay, here's the Dexter Walker home. This home is on the corner of South Park and Walnut. Dutton? Okay, Dutton. Dutton, okay. All right. The next style we're going to talk about is a style that is really unique to the Vine neighborhood, and you're not going to see it anywhere else, and that is the Octagon. The Octagon, which was a style of home that was promoted by a man named Orson Fowler, who was not a professional architect. He dabbled in, I think, a lot of different things. One of the things that he dabbled in, I shouldn't say dabbled in, he was known for, and that is being a phrenologist. Remember phrenology? Of course you don't remember phrenology, because none of you were around in the 1850s, and if you were, you're doing quite well for yourself, I have to say. But phrenology was where they could tell the character of you by feeling your skull, the bumps in your skull, okay? But Orson Fowler also believed that there was a true style of architecture, and he thought that the Octagon made a lot of sense. The Octagon House. In fact, he wrote a book called The Octagon House, A Home for All, or A New, Cheap, Convenient, and Superior Mode of Building in 1848. The book basically is known by the title A Home for All. The other one was the elongated version. He felt that the Octagon was better than a rectangle or a square structure. He felt it was cheaper to build, more space, natural light, easier to heat, easier to cool in the summer. And it has been estimated that there are probably about 2,000 octagons left in the United States. It was used for houses, barns, and schoolhouses. Well, this photograph right here, which comes from the collection of the library, is the James Clapham home, which was built in 1856. It sits on the corner of South Rose and Walnut Street. And you can see the photograph here that it was a two-story clapboard octagon, and it had a porch that really spanned, I don't know if it was the entire octagon or just the majority of it. I don't really know. But here's the house today. Of course, the porch is not the size of what it was before, but at least it looks a little better than some of the older photos from maybe 20, 30 years ago where the porch was enclosed. So at least this is open a little bit. You can see the brackets up on the cornice, the decorative brackets on the cornice, a very wide cornice. But here we have a two-story octagon. Now the second octagon we have in the Vine neighborhood, of course, is the Allen Potter home, built in 1855. So the Clapham was 1856, the Potter was 1855. Now Allen Potter, now Clapham was a druggist who was doing, of course, fine for himself. Allen Potter was somebody who was not only a businessman, but also someone who was involved with politics. He is known as coincidentally the first mayor of Kalamazoo, and Kalamazoo became a city 125 years ago. So you can see his home is a little bit different. We've got brick on this home, and it's also got a cupola, which if you've never been in the octagon before is really quite a treat, because that cupola is in the center room and really does add a lot of light that comes into the room. It's a very, very interesting home. So here we have the octagon, very, very unique to the Vine neighborhood. This is a portion of the bird's eye view map that Sharon also showed last week. This is 1874, and what I wanted to point out, you can see the octagon home way up there on the right-hand side. You can see West Street right there, and you can see the drawing of the octagon. So you can see that when Potter built this home in 1856, you can imagine that it was literally in the middle of nowhere. The closest thing that Potter had to him to the south was the Pioneer Cemetery, over on the corner of what we now know as Park Place and Westnedge. So this is about 20 years later after the home was built. So you can see that there's a little more homes around there. So the octagons, sort of special to the Vine neighborhood. Here we have another view of the octagon house. Italianate, 1860 to 1880. Now remember, when I give you those dates, again, that just gives you a little bit of a framework, because this sort of throws that 1860 date out the window, because the Remington house was actually built 2 years earlier in 1858. The Remingtons purchased it in 1859, but it is a classic Italianate, okay? Italianate, cubic shape. Hipped roof, meaning that the four sides are coming together to a point. Again, remember, not very professional, but it works. The windows are all the different shape and are the same shape and size, but I want you to look at these windows, because we'll compare those to, it shows a little of the transition that was happening. But anyway, the Italianate also has a decorative cornice with brackets on that cornice. Here we have paired brackets. And also, too, they have a portico, a very simple portico off that front door. Look at the detail on this portico with the curves, the keystone on the front, the sort of delicate work on there. That's typically what you would find in an Italianate home. Not that you wouldn't find a full spanning porch, but for the most part, you would find a portico like this. Nelson knows Italianates very well. Anyway, what I wanted to say is look at the windows. Okay, the Remington home was built in 1858, okay? The Dexter Walker home, here we go again, was 1857. So you can see that the windows were very similar. You have the divided panes on the Remington, same thing on the Walker. So it sort of shows a transition from Greek Revival into Italianate. What we will see as I show you the photos of other Italianates in the neighborhood, the windows are all, for the most part, the same shape and size. But as the years went on, the windows became a little narrower. than what we have here. Okay, here's the Remington house again. You can see some, again, the paired brackets up at the cornice. And here again is the portico on the front. The Remington family, the story goes that the Remington family moved in here in 1859. Unfortunately, Louis Remington, who owned a dry goods shop, passed away 2 years later, but his family continued to live there until the 1930s.